All right, we're live. Hey guys, welcome to another Saturday night live chat with us. I'm Sanjay, engineer wannabe. Well, I kind of totally botched my regular intro, but we got a special guest here today, and then our usual friends, Keith and Toran. I'm not sure if anyone else will join in, but if they do, we'll have a good chat. Um, but yeah, let's get started with a couple of introductions, and maybe I'll let Henry go first. Henry, how are you? And what are you up to? What do you do? And what's on your wrist?
Good stuff. Good evening, good afternoon, all that good stuff. Henry here, and thanks for the invitation to join the show today. Um, I guess what do? I'm a watch enthusiast. I like watches. I collect watches, but no, it's co-founder of York and Front Watch Company with my partner Eric. Just kind of really nice to have an opportunity to talk to fellow enthusiasts within the community, and not just talk about the brand and the watches itself, but really just talk watches in general. So pretty excited to participate tonight.
Yeah, that's great. And yeah, I mean, everyone in the community has an open invitation on here. So whenever you want to hop on, just feel free, and you don't even have to let me know. Just just well, I'll send you a link to our Discord. That way you'll get the live stream links, and you just hop on. We can chat watches
That's
every
awesome.
Saturday
Thank you.
night. Anyone else in the chat as well? Text chat. You guys know that everyone's welcome. So just send me a message. Um, but yeah, let's do some wristwatch checks. Keith, what's on your wrist?
Let's see. Yeah, on my wrist today, the Oris Aquis
Nice.
39.5
Oh,
clean
very
ocean.
nice.
And every time I put on this watch, I just love it so much. I'm like, why don't I wear this all the time? And then I wear it for a while, and I'm reminded of how heavy it is sometimes, how heavy and awkward it is. And it's like, oh yeah, that's why I don't wear it all the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, it definitely
Have,
looks great.
have you considered getting the rubber or leather strap for it?
I have not, no.
No. Would you be open to it, or do you kind of have to have it on bracelet?
Well, I like the bracelet, and the bracelet is the most comfortable part. It's really the head of the watch, which is the issue. So I
Right.
never really thought about the rubber or the leather.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
interesting though that that particular like that family of Oris watches. It's so iconic on the bracelet. I think it just completes that
It is.
look.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I usually like to gravitate towards bracelets as it is. So
Yeah.
yeah, I love the bracelet on it.
Yeah. And the Aquis is really quite unique. You kind of know when someone is wearing an Aquis because
Hmm.
it's distinctive. So
Certainly.
yeah, I really love the Aquas as well. I don't have mine anymore, Keith.
Yeah,
I
I was wondering about that. I'm like, it's
I
been a while since I've seen Sanjay wear it.
I I quietly let it go. But
Quietly.
only because I'm working up to like a 30th birthday special watch of some sort. I don't know what it will be, but
The
kind
white
of
birch.
no.
Oh,
I think I fell out of love with the white birch. So, but yeah, we
So
can
you
talk
didn't
about it.
even get rid of it for a trade-in. You
Yeah,
said goodbye.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
consolidation.
I'm ashamed, but no,
It doesn't
no, I'm
surprise
not
me at
really
all.
ashamed. It'll be worth it. Henry, what's on your wrist?
Yeah, I should have said. Of course, naturally, I had to put my the York and Front Berard. Where is this angle? There's the angle.
Yeah,
But went with the white one. Um, just like the white, the bright dial, and just kind of how plays with the light. Um,
yeah,
it's interesting. Like the black one itself is actually they're two that they're really the same watch, right? Functionally, it's just the dial difference, color, and the one minor change you probably notice. The minute track is white on the black one. We didn't do that on the white dial, but those little functional differences actually create quite a different wrist presence, which is kind of neat because otherwise it's the same thing. So pretty cool
yeah,
how these little details all stack up, right?
yeah. Absolutely, it's all about the details when it comes to wristwatches. Because yeah, even the slightest things can make a huge difference. Like a few millimeters can completely throw off the watch, right? So, as Keith just mentioned with the Aquas and
Definitely.
its its thickness. Um, yeah, so that's great. Looking forward to spending more time with it. I wore it around the house today, so I'm getting slowly acquainted with it. It took me a while to
Very good.
actually have a significant amount of time with it, but today was a good day for that. Toran. Oh, and hi, Bobby. Good to see you, man. Thanks for
Good
joining.
afternoon, everybody. Happy 4th of July
Hey,
to
Bob.
all the
Yes. Happy
weekend.
4th of July. Toran, what's on your wrist?
So today I'm wearing something I think would be topical for today's topic because it's a smaller watch, but you guys might recognize it. It's the Rolex
Ooh.
Explorer.
Oh, very
30
nice.
Ooh.
Very nice.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a smaller watch for me, but man, is it comfortable and it just goes with everything.
Yeah, small watch, eh? It's a pretty big watch for me.
I was just going
That's
to say that.
subjective, yeah.
It's all
I think of
relative.
it as a big one.
Yeah, that's great. I know you have quite a story with that watch. So if you guys haven't checked out Toran's review or the story on how he got it, it's on his channel, Everyday Watch Guy. So check it out. Bobby, what's on your wrist?
So this is actually a bigger size too, but
Hey.
Oh,
I
wow.
guess I'll show backwards.
You just need a glimpse of that and you know what that is.
So it's the Longo One Time Zoner.
Oh,
I thought that was a Seiko. No.
Yeah, the German Silver kind of fooled, you know. But
Yeah.
it's been wearing it for some time during the days off.
Yeah, Henry, that was Bobby's recent acquisition. He what would you call it? Consolidated a couple of pieces and went with the biggest gun you can get. That's a beautiful piece. Bobby.
well worth it. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
All right, let's check in with the chat. Everyone, welcome. Let us know what's on your wrist. Bill K, looks like you were first, unless if there was something before you, Bill. It looks like Oil Money might have been here, but also heard raves about Monta, but their high quality bracelets, lower finishing, but would be curious where you've heard they're better than Rolex. that was a blunder on my part, Bill. I in passing said if you don't care about heritage, you don't get a Rolex, get a Monta kind of thing. I didn't really mean it, but Oil Money, gives me grief for that. Keith, good to see you, man.
Oh, hey.
How's it going?
Great.
Peter, good to see you, Peter. Hope you're not driving this time. Happy 4th, yes. Wilson, good to see you as well. Who else? Justin, hey man, good to see you. Young Excellency, hey. Happy 4th of July to all the Americans out there. Young Excellency is from Atlantic Canada. I've been considering selling or trading my Aquas. Haven't made up my mind yet. Justin, you had the 43 mil Gen 1, right? If I remember correctly. He's wearing his green Willard today.
Oh, very nice.
Yep, beautiful piece. Wilson, which watch did you pull out of the watch chart today? Only the best. Only the best, Wilson.
Best person
Hey,
is
Darren.
right?
Yeah. Good to see you, Darren. I couldn't handle me as a guest panelist. It would be like live stream all over again. Yeah, that's another fun story. Let's see. Who else? Matthew's here too. Good to see you, man. Off work early today and happy to be here.
Nice.
Lucido Original on the wrist. Very nice. Matthew has a beautiful green, forest green Panamatic Lunar.
Oh, the green one's the best one.
Yeah, it's really nice. It's a tough choice between the Longa and the AP Black Panther. All right. I don't want to get demonetized. Yeah, Oil Money has some interesting comments. He's a great guy though. But yeah, if you become like a regular panelist, you'll know these guys are all the best. These guys are really cool. James Duffy, good to see you as well, man. Wearing his vintage Omega Geneve. Very nice. Well, Money was saying great topics. Was wondering if you would discuss what you learned on Tuesday night watch talk. Seiko equals trash. Wanda is far superior to Rolex. Yeah, we'll discuss it. All right, guys. So, topic of the evening is big watches on small wrists and small watches on big wrists. So I was thinking we kind of have a good mix of guys here. Keith and myself, we have really small wrists. So I'm 6.25 inch wristed. I don't know what your wrist size is, Henry.
Oh man, it's like on a hot day, a humid day, like 6.25 maybe. I'd
Yeah.
guess.
Okay, so you're in our camp.
Yeah.
We've got Sam, generally who's not here today, but he has a pretty large wrist. Toran has a large wrist, and I think Bobby has an average sized wrist, if I'm not mistaken. Bobby, could you refresh me on your
7.
wrist? 7, yeah. So that's perfect. So we've got a good group of good swing of people to see, different opinions and different thoughts, but. And we've chatted about this, I think, in passing. Sorry, I'm just going to change the view there. And I guess my thought was, if we kind of take away the politically correctness, so to speak, I'm just saying, like, not trying to not offend anyone, but just kind of mention what we thought about wrist sizes, so to speak. Like, some people get really offended when they see a big watch on a small wrist, right? And my YouTube comment section generally would agree with me. So people get pretty annoyed with me when I have a big watch on my wrist, and I don't understand why. I happen to say that, if I love the watch and I really like wearing it, it's comfortable to wear it, then I don't care. I'll wear it because there's no smaller option for me. Of course, I prefer the smaller option, but if it's not there, then I'm just going to enjoy what I have, or what I'm able to get. And some people, are not too concerned, while others think that big watches are the way to go, or small watches are the only way to go, whether you have a big wrist or a small wrist. So I was gonna throw it out to you guys, see what your thoughts were. Just, hey, it's a safe space. We can say if seeing a big watch on a small wrist offends you, we can talk about it, and there won't be any judgment or anything like that. So, or vice versa. If you think a small watch on a big wrist looks offensive to you, just let's chat about it. Let's explore those feelings. But yeah, let's. I don't want to put you on the spot, Henry, so I'm not gonna let you go first, unless if you want to. But we can go clockwise. So Keith, you're always next to me. So what are your thoughts?
I mean, me personally, I've never owned a watch 40 millimeters and above. Partially because I'm too scared. I'm gonna not like it.
Yeah.
I wish I had a chance to try on bigger watches for a longer amount of time than like the 60 seconds at a store. But for me, I think just the smaller watches, it's more comfortable. It looks better on my wrist than a big watch. I think it would look out of place. So that's where I gravitate towards. But I wish I had more experience with the bigger watches.
Yeah.
Bobby actually suggested this podcast episode recently from Hodinky. Who was the guy on? Who was the guest?
Mark Cho.
Mark Cho.
Yep, he's from Armory.
One thing they mentioned that I wish brands did more, and then they also mentioned that is I wish it just like the Oris Aquas comes in the 43.5, the 40, the 41.5, the 39.5. But from a lot of other brands, like a sub is going to be the 41 millimeters. That's your only choice. So really, I just wish there was more variety to choose from than, because like, for example, the Rado comes in like 37 and the 42 or whatever it is. Like there's not that sweet spot for me. Maybe the 37 would work. But then you kind of write off entire brands or entire, models, not you, Sanjay, but me. I should say I write off entire models just because they don't have the exact size that would work well for me. But yeah, that was kind of a ramble. That's my thoughts, though.
No. It's great. But to be fair to Rolex, they do have like the Yachtmaster, which is 37, and then they have the 40, and the OPs.
True.
And Datejusts, they have quite a variety of selection. I guess the sub is kind of an outlier because that's only one size, kind of.
Well, maybe
And the
I'm too
Daytona.
picky because the Black Bay, the non-diver Black Bay comes in 36 and 41. And it's like, man, where's that 38? Yeah, I don't know. Maybe, maybe I just need to learn to live with one of the other options that are out there. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, no. It's if you really wanted to sub, I 100% believe that you can pull off, that 41, or theoretically or technically the 40.5 millimeter sub that is out right now. You could totally pull it off. You could totally pull off the 42 millimeter Seiko Marine Master 200. I'm telling you, you could totally do it.
That's what I'm being told.
Yeah. But yeah, they're like Blancpain, I think is difficult if you really wanted 50 fathoms. I think you kind of have to compromise if you want to go with the smaller one, movement wise. Same with Glasuta, I think. Go with the CQ. You kind of have to compromise when you're going with the smaller size. Even with something as small like a independent brand like Cameron Weiss watches.
Oh yeah.
You have to compromise if you want to go with their 38 mil model, right? And yeah, it's kind of sad, but I'd say eventually people would come around to getting that smaller size. But let's
Yeah. Oh, real quick before I forget, sorry.
yeah.
I was listening to Beyond the Dial, the podcast, and this is an old episode, but Alan, I think his name of the host, he was touring Longines, I want to say. He was doing an article for one of the websites, and he was saying to like the executive that they were talking to, like, hey, I would love this in a 36 millimeter. And the executive say, how many do you think we'd sell of a 36 millimeter of that watch? And he's like, probably 4. I don't know. It's like people, as much as watch sizes are decreasing, I think the people still buy the bigger ones. So that's part of the reason why there's not those smaller watches out there. But sorry to interrupt.
No, that's a good point. But at the same time, Mark Cho kind of contradicted that point, though, right? Because he was saying the 36, at least of the thousand or approximately 2,000 people he'd surveyed, 36 was the sweet spot watch. And he also mentioned in that podcast that Rolex brought the 36 mil Explorer, and they probably know that that's going to sell pretty well, all things considered. So you never know. Maybe there is a good market for a 36 mil watch.
Yeah, it's hard to say because I picture that survey being done by watch nerds, whereas Longines is trying to sell watches to a lot more than just people who are watch enthusiasts. So yeah, that's I mean, so it's interesting how reflective that survey is of the entire population.
Yeah. Do you guys have anything to add to that before I jump into the chat?
I think the survey also had 99% males respond.
Yeah.
So I think once you have more, we're going towards a direction in which there's no male or female watches anymore, and they're just selling watches. And then if you're including, let's say the percentage goes up to 20-50, and like 40% audience is females, I think the 20% people who want 36 millimeter watches are going to go much, much higher. So I think 36 millimeters might be a sweet spot for a lot of the population. So that was a little biased there from the females not being included. No, she said, but he only got I think 17 females or 11 females respond out of 2,000 people. So
yeah, actually, yeah, you're right. Okay, I'm sure Henry will pop back in. Oh, there he is. Hello, sir.
Apologies.
Oh, no worries whatsoever. So just want to say hi to Ervithicus. Good to see you, my friend. He's in Canada too. if I'm not mistaken, Niagara area. Um, Wilson saying, "Offend away. It's just a watch." Absolutely, my friend. Bill's wrist is 8.5 inches. So I had
Wow.
trouble with many bracelets or straps being too short. So anything smaller than 40 millimeters looks too small. I can understand that. Oil Money's wrist is huge as well, so he tends to need bigger watches. Um, what? Did I miss something?
Oil money just had a when Henry just popped out. He said it must have the same ISP as Marcus.
Well,
Yeah, it's a little hit
Marcus,
or miss out here, unfortunately.
Marcus is in the GTA as well, so
Yeah.
Could very well be then.
yeah.
You're stealing his Wi-Fi, aren't you?
Wilson says, "Worst comes to worst, we can wear a watch on your ankle," just like our boy Wolfie. Wonder if Wolfgang is in the chat. Nope. Darren chiming in. I always thought it looked a bit off when athletes wear those bigger Garmin Sunto watches that are like 44 to 48 with smaller wrists. Also, they tend to ding them up. Same logic applies to automatic. Yeah, I guess the bigger the watch, the more it's susceptible to bangs and knocks. I remember when I was into just smartwatches a few years ago, and they were proliferating. And Nixon made a smartwatch, and it was a big honking smartwatch, and it had a big screen, and that's the only reason I wanted it. The bigger the screen, the better. The bigger the battery, right? The bigger the watch. I wish I had a picture or a wrist shot of it because it would have looked comical. I think it was like 47 millimeters on my tiny, tiny wrist, but I was so happy with that thing. I was like, look, I can watch a movie.
It's functional.
Yeah, it was functional, and I didn't need it for work at the time. I was like a quality engineer, so it was nice to have a screen on my wrist to see who was calling me and what needed to be done when the phone wasn't allowed. Steph S, good to see you as well. He also has a 8.5 inch wrist. Wow. Anything smaller than a Panerai or the SLGA 003 seems too small. SLGA 003 is a beautiful watch. I wish I could pull that off.
I really want one of those.
Yeah. Poor Keith going to spend his whole life living in a panic room. Only unisex watches. It's not just Keith. Justin also has an average size wrist. It seems 7 and 7.25 inches. Very cool.
I think that's the other thing on that panel from the Hodinkee. Mark shows saying that I think the average wrist size was 6 3/4. So people who think that it's smaller, people who have around 6 3/4, they think their wrist size is smaller. Actually, might be average. That's another interesting point that was brought up. A lot of people think that their wrists are small, but probably it's average, especially since he himself is a tailor. And he knows like arm size, like when they're measuring for suits and everything, he doesn't get that type of discrepancy. Unlike for us watch geeks, there's this huge discrepancy. Everybody says their watch wrist size is small.
Yeah.
Which is
His
interesting.
theory was because if someone were to go to a watch boutique and try on a watch, every watch would feel a little bit too big, and so everyone thinks they've got average sized arms or whatever, except their wrists are tiny. So they kind of get this skewed idea of their wrist size based on what's out in the market, which is generally too big for most people, which is really fascinating. And Mark Cho actually, in a different podcast, he had actually gone to Grand Seiko when he picked up his amazingly beautiful SBGZ 003, I think. It was like a hand-carved snowflake case Grand Seiko, and done at the Micro studio. So he went there personally to pick that watch up, and he gave them the survey data. So it's interesting that Grand Seiko watch sizes have been shrinking before, like the trend. I feel like they've been kind of shrinking, especially with say the Elegance lineup. because they kind of, the elegant watches tended to be too big too, like 40 millimeters and up. And now they're going down to like 38, 38 and a half. It might just be me and confirmation bias, but it is nice to see watch sizes going down. Toran, do you want to throw your hat in the ring? Tell me about what you think when it comes to, say, a big watch on a small wrist, a small watch on a big wrist. I mean, have you worn anything smaller than? I know you have, but for the sake of this conversation, have you worn anything smaller than your Explorer?
Yeah. I mean, for a while, like the longest watch that stayed in my collection is a Seiko Sarb 035, and I think that's like 37 and a half or 38, I think. And my first Rolex, it wasn't the Explorer, it was a 36 millimeter Datejust chronographed, which it was two-tone, so it was a little too flashy for me, so I did flip it. But
yeah,
I thought proportionally it still sat on my wrist quite well.
So if you were going to get a Datejust now, which size would you get?
Is 41 a thing?
Yeah.
For Datejust? I don't even really like Datejust, to be honest.
Oh, really?
Yeah. If if I'm going for another Rolex, it'd be the 41 millimeter no date sub. That would be my choice. But I guess, like, from my personal experience, like, my wrist size is 7.5 inches, and just like with my watch journey, like when I started my YouTube channel, I did wear bigger watches, and I was really into the Seiko Prospects line, which, like, typically those watches were 42 and up. In fact, I think one of the first ones I reviewed was a turtle, like a Pepsi turtle, so that's 45 millimeters. Then I had a Sumo, which is, again, a larger dive watch, and then I also had a Samurai and a Tuna. But it's interesting now, looking back over the course of 3 years of having my channel, historically the watches that have stayed in my collection have actually been smaller. Like the Explorer, this Explorer here, my Sarb, my Grand Seiko SPGN 003. They're 39 millimeter watches, essentially. And I think the sweet spot that I really am comfortable with is really like a 41, 42 millimeter in terms of like a sports watch. And even though I feel like I can pull off watches that are larger, like, again, I owned a lot of divers that were 44 plus. It's just interesting when I was actually kind of doing some research for this topic. Like, I look back historically, and again, it's just the watches that have kind of stayed in my collection are actually around 39 to 41 millimeter. So I guess it comes down to personal preference.
Yeah. Now, would you say you have a strong reaction if you do see like a giant watch on a small wrist?
Well,
not to press too hard or anything, but
I mean, not overly. Although, like, when I first saw a lot of your videos, Sanjay, I was like, "What's this guy doing?" But like, your reviews were very informative. It was funny. Like, when I had my Grand Seiko SPGN 231, the spring dive titanium diver, like, I watched your review of it first, and like, I know you were trying to pull it off, but like, it was a little challenging, personally, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But like, I felt like you were confident with it, and the review was very informative. So by the end of the review, my initial impression might have been a little bit thrown off, but by the end, I'm like, yeah, you know what, that would work for you. So I'm not overly offended by it. I guess it just depends more on the fashion brands, I think, throw me off more than anything. Like, if someone's wearing like a gaudy Invicta, it's like 55 millimeters, or like one of those big Nixon watches, yeah, it's a little off-putting for me. But at the end of the day, like, wear what you like, and like, I'm never going to be one of those watch snobs that would, like, just dismiss somebody purely based on if they're wearing a watch that they feel it's enjoyable for them and it gets them into the hobby.
Yeah, that's a good point. And yeah, I did realize, again, like, even when I'm wearing my my Seamaster Necton, I fully understand that this is far too big for me. But then you put it on and you take a look at it, and then you forget about it. You just start to appreciate the watch for what it is. And of course, my preference would be for there to be a mid-size Seamaster Necton, and I would love it, and I would probably keep it even longer. But it's not. It doesn't exist. So you gotta do what you gotta do, right?
Yeah, and if
But
I
yeah.
can add to that, I think a lot of it also comes down to how people kind of personalize the watch, like with straps or other things. Like I think Sanjay, you did a really good job pairing up your Necton with that. Is it like a sailcloth, that Hirsch strap you
It's
have? Like, on your wrist, that looks awesome.
Thanks. It's a rubber lined. I think it's some kind of treated carbon fiber kind of rally
okay.
style. Yeah. So it's a synthetic strap. No, I don't believe there's anything organic in it. There might be, but I don't think so, because it says it's 300 meters water resistant. So you
Yeah,
can take
most of
that.
the Hirsch composite straps say that.
Yeah. Yeah, I just find it funny when someone says a strap is rated for 300 meters. It's not going to crush when you go below 300 meters. The strap will be fine. But yeah, that's just a gag for me. I just realized that I forgot to do a wrist check. So my watch actually is something that is, I think, borderline a bit not big-ish, but kind of big. It's the SPB 213. So Seiko 62 Mass, not Cisco. But yeah, it was funny when you mentioned like the range of sizes in a collection, Torn. I don't know if I misunderstood you, but that made me want to go over there, get my watch box, because I have a bit of a range of sizes, because my smallest watch is like these two watches here. They're 34 mil ladies Seiko watches. They say ladies, but I seriously disagree. They're um, they wear they wear identical to the cocktail time watches, and I think they wear really well on my wrist. And then on the other extreme, I've had like the SPGA 231, which is a 44 millimeter titanium diver. And even the Necton, even though it's 42 millimeters, it presents itself bigger than a 42 millimeter watch, I think. So I was curious. I know, Keith, your collection is a bit small, but your range in size, I think you have the smallest would probably be like the F91W, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, there's the F91W, and then I have a 38, a 39, and a 39 and a half.
right.
Not a lot of range.
Toran, I think you had the pretty good range as well, because your SPGN 02
03.
003.
Three.
Yeah. 3. Okay. That one is 39 millimeters as well as your Explorer.
Yeah, and then the last two watches I purchased were 39 millimeters. The Helios Fairwind is a 39 millimeter diver, and I also picked up a 39 millimeter pilot watch, which was the Archimedes 39 millimeter pilot. I have to review those watches still, but yeah, for some reason, as long as it's a legible watch and it's functional, like I like that size.
Yeah. And I know, Bobby, you have quite a range in watches as well from your Reverso. What would be your smallest watch, Bobby?
I think it would be Reverso, but the Reverso is kind of a weird one because it's a square watch.
Yeah.
So it's hard to, but it's an ultra thin, only like 7 millimeters thick. So it's definitely can be worn by both males and females. But I love that watch. It feels so elegant and so light. It's only 50 grams weighting. So I weigh my watches because when I make coffee, I put it on the machine and it's only 50 grams total. And so that's the lightest watch I've had. And the largest one I've ever had was the 46 millimeters, which was the IWC Top Gun.
Oh, okay.
That was ceramic, though. Again, another thing that people have to consider is the material. I think ceramic or anything titanium the lighter it is, you don't feel the weight or the heft on it on your wrist, and I think it's much more comfortable than people would. I think Keith, if I remember correctly, you wore the Grand Seiko Spring Edition, right?
Yeah, I thought that fit me really well, actually,
And that's
especially
40
for being
millimeters,
40.
right?
Mhm.
It's 40 millimeters, but it's titanium. So it makes you feel better because it doesn't have the heft or the thing. So I think material definitely plays a part when making a decision. On the contrary, I think a lot of people, pop culture, I think modern day, I think people sensationalize larger watches like, Sylvester Stallone, Arnold, wearing the big Panerai watches. And again, brands. I think Panerai looks great when it's oversized. It's just a watch that looks really, really nice, especially with that, the dial layout and everything. But I think a lot of times we don't popularize the ones that are smaller on bigger wrists. So I don't know if you ever watched the TV show Sopranos, right? Tony Soprano wears a gold day date 36 millimeters, and he's a big guy, and it looks great on him. He looks like a boss.
Mhm.
So I think precious metals might be better smaller. I was actually considering, instead of the Longa that I have right here, this is 41.9 platinum, only because it's platinum. I'm okay with it being on the larger size. But if this was like yellow gold or something, I would probably go for a little Longa, which is like 36 millimeters. So I think that's another thing. The more precious it is, I think the more smaller it'd be better, in my opinion.
Yeah. I've been saving Henry for last because we don't really know what your collection is like, Henry. Would you want to kind of chime in and let us know what your collection is like?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So I think I'm not sure if you guys know. So there's obviously the York and Front Watch Company, but I do have a personal collection that I have on a Instagram page, Jub Hat.
Oh, okay.
And so if you do or if you're familiar with that, at least you'll know that it's a pretty diverse in the sense that it's all Seiko, but different types of Seiko. So I'm a big Seiko
Yeah.
collector, and that whole size thing is something that I think about a lot, just because my wrists are so small, like 6.25, 6.3. Like I think pushing 6.5 if it's like really kind of hot and humid out. But so for me, anything like 40 mil is considered big on wrist. Um, but my collection spans, the smallest is a 32 mil, I think. 32 or 34. It's a 66 caliber hand winder from the 60s, which is just super clean, just really small, but I can pull it off. And then the largest is I forget the reference, but it's the solar tuna, digital tuna. So that
Okay.
thing's like 50 mil, I think. It's ridiculous, but I love the thing. It's crazy on wrist. It's literally like a hockey puck.
Yeah.
But it's got that big inverted LCD display that just looks super cool. And the tuna format is just so cool with the shroud. Granted, it's not an easy watch to wear. I do banging off doors and stuff all the time because it's so big. But then if you look at a lot of my Seikos, so the SARB, I have an SCVS 003, so the predecessor to the SARB 033. Same size, which is 38 by 44 by 12 mil. And fun fact, I know that off heart because when we designed our Berard for York and Front, I just took that watch and put calipers on it, and that was the base size for our watch. Because to me, that was just such the perfect size when I put it on wrist, and it could scale up for people with larger wrists, and people with really small wrists like myself could pull it off. So that was kind of the sweet spot. Then you have some of the vintage stuff, which is more in the 34 to 37 mil, depending on what it is. Um, and then so like if you look at that, the Grand Seiko right there, like that's like 37, but to me on my wrist it looks kind of huge. But that's 37. But the fat lugs kind of distort your perspective of the size. And again, you look at ratios. We talk about little details. Super slim bezel, all dial. That's something that I think about a lot. It's actually just how does it visually balance out proportion wise, and like the cocktail time there. That's what a 40 and a half. So I mean, some
Yep.
people pull that off very well. For me, it still looks a little big depending on angle. I think a lot of times when you think of a watch as oversized, is do the lugs hang off the side of the wrist? And for me, my wrists are very flat in profile, so that way I could still wear 40s, 42s, and get away with it because I don't get the lug overhang. But then sometimes it's something like the SKX. It's actually such a compact case package dimensionally. It's quite square. It's 42, I think, right? But you can still kind of have it on a small wrist, and it doesn't look like it's swallowing you. So that's always a ton of fun. But yeah, I think it's like the Speedmaster is probably one of the larger watches, but to me, it's never felt unwieldy, uncomfortable, or too large. And I do have a 2254 Seamaster, which is also a larger piece, I think 41-ish, but it's never felt really kind of oversized just because it's quite thin and it has an old ETA base movement. So I think a lot of times it's not just functionally the dimensions, but you really have to put it on. And I think within the Seiko collector community, you hear a lot of the talk of the Seiko magic. How do they repackage big watches into something that's approachable, comfortable, and is kind of wearable for smaller wristed people? And I'm not quite sure how they do it, but I think it really just boiled down to a lot of it's lug to lug is critically important. And then just really, we talked about weight, materials, all of that has a very critical influence on whether or not it feels too big for somebody. But when it comes to looking too big and being, big watches and small wrists, I think it just, to a couple points mentioned tonight, it's wear what makes you happy. It's everyone's entitled to their opinion. Everyone will have an opinion. But at the end of the day, if you feel good about what you have on wrist and it makes you smile, that's the most important thing. And I don't think you should let other people detract away from that. One idea that keeps popping up in my head, thinking about how the industry is downsizing in general. We went through the heydays of like the big AP Royal Oaks and the Panerais, and Panerais pushing 4750 mil special editions, and now Panerai, even like the brand that made that big watch kind of era kind of at its peak, they've started introducing smaller versions like 38 mil Pams, and it's like that's kind of weird because that watch should be huge. It looks kind of off being a little smaller.
Yeah.
But now that we're seeing that downtrend, yeah, we're seeing more 38s and 39s coming out, and maybe in a couple of years we'll start seeing more 36s. But it's interesting because you really do have to think about it from economics, right? Or companies are doing their homework and they're looking at the masses, and maybe the vocal enthusiast community saying we want 38s and 36s, but the masses and the data and the sales show that 40, 41, 42 is what's actually selling, so they'll do that. And it's the analogy that I like to think about is in the car space, right? We car enthusiasts always scream and shout, save the manuals, keep the manual transmission going. But the reality is, when you look at manual transmission sales, they're just like a fraction of the total sales that an automaker will put out. So unfortunately, that's a dying breed. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out.
That kind of hits close to home because I really want like a SUV or something that's manual transmission, and it's impossible. It doesn't exist.
Good luck.
Except if it's like an old Subaru Forester or something, you really can't do it. It has to be automatic. Sorry, Keith. It looked like you were about to say something.
No.
Sorry,
Does your wife like driving manual cars?
She puts up with it. She doesn't mind it.
Okay.
It makes her so cool though.
It is super cool.
Yeah, because my wife. I remember training her because when we bought our first car together, I was like, "Hey, would it be okay if we got a manual?" And she was like, "Oh yeah, I used to drive manual all the time." And then we get into the car and she stalls it and she couldn't remember how to drive it. And so we were going on the highway. I didn't think that I should teach her how to downshift or shift down. So she's stomping on the gas at sixth gear and the car is not accelerating and we're at the end of the merging lane. I'm like, what are you doing? Come on, shift down. We gotta accelerate. That was a fun night. But after that, we went into a back road and it was like, okay, so when you need to accelerate, you have to downshift, shift down. You don't have to rev match, just shift down, please. But yeah, that was fun. Before we go further, I just want to see what's happening in the chat real quick. Justin mentioned that he got a deal on a Sarks 055. That's a really cool watch. Titanium with the frosted dial. Really cool. Excited to add it to his watch box, which is mostly filled with diver and tool watches. It's very nice. They actually did an SJE 073, which I had, and I think I preferred the Sarks 055 over the SJE because the SJE, they made it so thin that it wore really awkwardly because it was this big watch with little to no bezel, and it was 9 millimeters thin. It was really awkward to wear, and I think the Sarks, which is like 11 millimeters thick, is way more comfortable to wear. So you'd think thinner is better all the time, but actually, if it's not proportional, it's not good. Ronan's here too. Hey man, good to see you. Alex as well. He'll be the oddball with a large wrist. His 41 millimeter Zin 104 feels too large on his 8 3/4 inch wrist. My 38 millimeter Sark 33 says large that I feel comfortable wearing. Wow, that's very interesting perspective.
I think another thing is thickness, right? Thickness of the watch. I think a lot of people get, not so excited when it goes really thick. I feel like personally above 14 millimeters.
Yeah.
Even above 13 millimeters, maybe the Speedy Professional, that's probably the best thickness I can go. And beyond that, it might make you feel top heavy, the watch.
Yeah, it's true. And Henry mentioned like that Seiko magic. And the thing I find with Seiko is they break up the case side so well. So when you look at the case profile, they kind of break it up so well. This is actually a really good example here. Go full screen. So here you got like a brushed finish, a polished finish, and then polished again at the bottom. So this is not the best example, but it is one of the instances where Seiko breaks up that case side, and so it becomes way more. It disguises the thickness. It becomes way more acceptable for you to wear, and they kind of shave the sides too, so that it kind of sinks into your wrist. If you have a flatter wrist, kind of sinks in there, and all these little things they add up to a more pleasant wearing experience.
I think Seiko does it really well. I think the brand that does not do it well at all is Tudor.
Yeah,
Black Bay.
Their Black Bay original one, the Edo one with the 40. Is it 41 millimeters, Toran?
Yep.
I forgot. It's 41 or 40.
41.
It is 14.5 millimeters thick, and it is not even brushed or anything. It's just a slab of metal. And I was like, this is not wearing, because I'm pretty comfortable between 38 and 42. I'm like, this is not it. I wear Seamaster too, and I'm like, this is not it. And then I was looking at the dimensions. I was like, oh, this is why. And so that's why the Black Bay 58 is a little bit better, because of they went down on the thickness a lot along with the case size. But I just feel like brands have to be creative on their case sides and thicknesses if they want to, Moser, for another example, Moser hollows it out. So they recess a lot of the material inside. So it's like when you look at a case, you can see the crown, and then it goes inside so that it removes a lot of weight. It's pretty interesting to be creative.
Grand Seiko does that too, where they like concave metal or concave side kind of to make it wear better. But it's interesting that you mentioned that the Tudor Black Bay 58, because the Black Bay 58 I found was only acceptable. You'd think on paper 11.9 millimeters thick or 12 millimeters thick is outstanding for a diver, right? But then you put it on wrist, the Black Bay 58 is like, okay, it's acceptable. It's not, wow, this is so thin. It's okay.
So Sanjay, you got to compare to the 41 millimeter Black Bay though.
Oh yeah, for sure. That
Like if
that
you were to contrast those two, it's like night and day.
It's
Well,
like
yeah.
mini me
Yeah.
to Dr. Evil. but again, I agree. Tudor doesn't do it well, so even that Black Bay 58 is just acceptable. It won't be, you know, they don't even. I guess the parent company Rolex doesn't do it either. They just make the, you know, their case backs and their case size are not known for like case finishing.
They're old oyster cases though. The way, because they had like a teardrop or water droplet kind of feel to it, and I think that kind of really disguises thickness too. So they're old oyster cases, and the Tudor Royal kind of replicated that because it's like a water droplet on your wrist. It looks like there's surface tension holding the metal together, and it's such a nice feeling. And even though the watch might be thick, you don't really notice it because it kind of blends in. Longines did that with their monopusher chronograph. So the pulsometer doctor's chronograph with the white lacquer dial. Longines did a kind of like a rounded case side, and that disguised the honking like 14.9 millimeter, Valjoux movement. So I think that's another way brands can look at thinning out or changing the feel of a thick watch into a thinner watch. Is like making it rounded and um, or even cutting it out, hollowing it out, like Bobby mentioned. So that's
Another
really interesting.
another watch that I thought was fascinating in its ability to hide height or thickness in the cases. If you just go hands on, and it's not even an expensive watch, grab an Orient Bambino, look at the mid case, and it barely is there. It's the slimmest thing because they add all that height in the crystal and in the case back, and they bevel out the case back. So you actually, when you look at it on the wrist, the mid case sits a good chunk above the wrist, but visually, it doesn't look like a thick watch.
Yeah.
It looks really thin actually from the side profile, but it's such a contrast to exactly that. Like when you guys are saying what's a thick watch, and it's like a Black Bay. That thing is just slab side brick of steel on the wrist, right?
Yeah, for sure.
That's a good point. I think we forgive if the crystal or the case back is there's thickness there, because we always say it's the doming of the crystal, or and it makes it visually appealing too. I agree that even Blancpain has that same thing with the domed bezel. Moser has a domed crystal, which gives a lot of thickness, but when you wear it, it's the same type of feeling. That's a very, very good point.
Yeah. Justin was mentioning that he's getting subtle hints that I'm getting rid of the Seamaster. I really am not. I love my Seamaster. Unless if I get into another fender bender, I'm sure something will happen.
Just like you love the Railmaster, right?
Yeah. Henry, there was this incident last month or 2 months ago. I got into a fender bender, and my second favorite watch was my Railmaster, and I put my frustration into that watch, and I just traded it in. It was the most self-destructive thing I could do, but I think the consolation was that I got a Speedmaster out of it, so I traded it for a Speedmaster. And that
Not all is
Speedmaster,
lost.
yeah, the Speedmaster was kind of a good consolation. So just to bring you up to speed there. Mental Plane, good to see you, man. Thanks for joining us. He has the same wrist size as me, and he does not know how I wear some of my watches. I do wear my watch low. That does help. So if I have a smaller watch, I'll actually wear it up here. But yeah, with a larger watch, I do wear it low. Jonathan Robinson, hey man, good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Forgot to say hello to Soul Precisionist Hand Wind on a strap code end mill. I like that bracelet. The end mill is really nice. Not familiar with the hand wound Precisionist though.
I had a question for the panel here. What's the most fitting watch you guys have that you wear? Like, of the watches you own, like you had to choose only one, the best fitting one.
I'll go. I guess the best fitting one would be this guy. But it wouldn't be the one I choose.
No, but it doesn't have to be your favorite watch. I mean, the most fitting doesn't necessarily be your favorite watch, but it's interesting to know that, because I look at that now, like what Toran was saying earlier. I think I used to like, I still like 42, 44 millimeter watches, but I'm tending to go towards 39 and 40 millimeter watches, or 38 millimeter watches, just because they feel better, they fit better. I'm trying to, if I'm selecting a watch now, I'll probably go towards that side, based on the best fitting watch in my collection. So that's why I was asking the question to everyone.
Yeah. Keith, do you want to answer?
Yeah, I would go either the Hamilton or the Laurier. Sometimes when I still want to wear a diver and the Oris Aquas is getting kind of annoying, I'll switch to the Laurier, and it's just perfect. It's the third generation, so it's not as thick as the other two generations of that watch. And the 47, the longer lug to lug actually helps it be more comfortable, because it's just the weight distribution is a little better. So yeah, I always think of that as my best fitting watch.
And how many millimeters is it?
It's they say 39 on the website. I think the case is 38 and a half, and it's 37 and a half at the bezel. So
Great. That sounds like a well-fitting watch for any wrist.
right.
How about you, Toran?
Yeah, I was going back and forth between two watches. One wears better on straps, and so one is it's a Zin 104, 41 millimeter, and when I had mine, I had the white dial one with the indices, not the airbag markers, and it was just a strap monster for me. I really enjoyed having it. But the best one on bracelet is actually this guy. It's the Explorer. And it surprised me because when I first got the Explorer, I thought the taper on the bracelet was too much, like going from 20 to about 16, because it was also a smaller watch. But I mean, they know what they're doing, because the proportions are just, it's really comfortable on wrist. And the Explorer itself is, I think it's only like 11 millimeters, and it's got the oyster case. So it does kind of have like a polish, like a, I don't know, the sides of it are kind of bellied out a little. So I don't know. It just overall
Nice.
wears
Yeah.
really comfortable.
How about you, Henry?
For me, it's probably my Lord Marvel. It's 30, just under 36 mil, I think. Little hand winder. It's got a nice, I can't remember what the lug to lug is. It's a little bit more long that way, and it just has a really nice balance to the wrist.
Yeah. I'll have to look that up on your Instagram. That sounds beautiful. Going back to the chat, Gabs87, good to meet you, man. Thanks for joining us. Without measuring my wrist, I imagined that it was a normal size, so I got a 42 millimeter Orient Sun and Moon. Big mistake. Oil Money is poking a bit of fun at you, Henry. Another paper guy. Well, you come to the right place. Oil Money is a good guy. He just pretends to be a jerk. I have proof that he is a nice guy, so he'll deny it. Bruno, good to see you, man. Thanks for joining us. I know this you've been here for a while, but just catching up on the chat. Dial to case ratio is almost as important as the lug to lug measurement for how big the watch wears. That's a really good point. All dial watch wears way bigger, even if the lug to lug is trim. Henry coming in with fire. Not sure what he was referring to, but I believe him. Pam Due was a joke. 30 meters wasn't very good. Snapback case 30 atmosphere, yeah. Or 33 atmospheres, I would think. Matthew is agreeing about the Due. Let's see. Totally jumped on me. The chat seems to do that. Mental Plane says, I just bought an Oris Diver 65 40 millimeter bronze bezel. I find that my absolute max for my 6 1/4 inch wrist. Yeah. It kind of wears big too. That I own that very watch, and I felt like there was a bit of overhang on my wrist, even though theoretically there shouldn't be any. but it has really flat lugs that go straight out. Um, but I enjoyed it while I had it. So great pickup, by the way, rental plane. Ronin has a 6 and 3/4 inch wrist. I'm seriously considering a Squally Master Diver flagship, 44 by 16. Oof, that's a big one. Not familiar with it though. Uh, hey, Joey B is here. Good to see you, man.
Nice. Hi, Joey.
Thanks for joining us. Kevin S is here too. Hey, man, good to see you. Seiko does a good job with the Sumo. Great case design and a larger watch. Henry, have you ever owned a Sumo?
I haven't. I've gone on loan with one before from a friend. I think part of why, going back to that little Seiko magic with the cases, is a lot of it is the drape on the case.
Yeah.
The way the lugs curve downwards around the wrist and the hugs the wrist, I find the Sumo does that really well. Very comfortable.
Yeah, and with the Sumo, I also find it helps that it's a 20 millimeter lug opening, so like the
Okay.
band where is actually a little narrower as well.
Yeah.
I think
could
same
never.
thing appears to the turtle too, right? The Seiko turtle, I love just even though it's 43.5, right? I believe
Yeah, it's almost
Wow.
44.
the lug to lug is like key critical. It's short lugs and beautifully
Yep.
cushioned turtle case, I guess. It's just a pleasure to wear.
Same with the Willard,
Yep.
42, even smaller. So it's really nice. Or I should say the Willard reissue, recreation.
Seiko does magic with their dive watches. That's the
Yeah.
easy way of saying it.
Yeah.
Grand Seiko, on the other hand, does not. Sanjay, Seiko, yes.
No, I'd say, that 44 millimeter watch wore okay.
Because it was titanium, right? It was in titanium?
Yeah, that made a big difference actually.
If that was steel, you would have been like lifting weights every day.
Yeah, did you review the steel version, the 229, Sanjay?
No. I wish I could, but I know I probably couldn't handle it, so I didn't even try.
I don't even think I can handle it.
Yeah.
Like, titanium made all the difference.
Yeah. Even with titanium, it weighed like a regular steel watch, like 150 plus grams. So it was heavy. But it was good.
Another one interesting one, just since this one I'm wearing right now, it's platinum, so it's really heavy, but it's on a strap, so it evens out. Like it just has a nice comfortable heft to the thing, which is nice. I think precious metal on a strap is really nice to wear. Maybe even gold would probably be the same. Platinum, I think it's heavier than gold. I presume it is.
Yeah.
But I think that's a nice way of distributing weight evenly.
Yeah. Do you find you have to wear it tighter than you would normally wear a strapped watch, considering the weights on the head of the watch?
Yeah, I think so. I just feel, and I a little concerned if I just drop it or something. So
Right.
I'm keeping it a little more tight than usual. But it again, Longa makes it very thin. It's only 10 millimeters thick,
Yeah.
even though with a complicated watch. And the lug to lug is less than 50. So
That would
it's
make quite a difference.
well designed watch.
For sure. Chaz from the Berg was stopping in too. Hey man, thanks so much. Hope you have a great weekend too. Happy 4th of July. Wilson, some people cut themselves and some people buy watches. What are you saying, Wilson? Joey was saying the IWC I have incoming has close to 17 millimeters in thickness. Oof, wow. Everyone says it looks and feels close to 14 on the wrist. Okay. Yeah, it will be interesting to hear what you think once you do get
And
it.
the question to ask to Joey is, what material is it? Because IWC, a lot of them, the Ceratanium and everything, the one I just gave up was 46 millimeters, but 16 millimeters thick.
Yeah.
But it was ceramic. So that made all the difference. So
For sure. Precisionist is 43 millimeters with 22 millimeter lug width. Okay. Tissot Precisionist. Bruce Leroy, good to see you as well, man. Thanks for joining us. Great explanation of breakup of case. Navy Blue Monster, good to see you. for 39 millimeter non-divers and 40 to 42 millimeter divers and chronos. Very cool.
So that's a funny thing because my favorite watch that I like to wear is the Ed White Speedmaster.
Yeah.
And that's 39 millimeters. So even though I have a lot of Speedmasters, the best one wearing is 39. Even though the 42 is still not a bad watch, the 39 millimeters has perfect proportions.
Well, Money was saying my best fitting watch is the Omega Planet Ocean Deep Black GMT 45 millimeter ceramic. Not for the limp wristed. Oh, no way, Ronan. You have an SBGK 005? That's a beautiful piece. It's a blue Mount Iwate manual wound. Oh, exquisite. That's really cool that you have one. Limited edition too, so you can't get them anymore. And he has the OEM bracelet from the SBGK 009. Oh, so good. Okay, guys. Well, we're heading a bit over time, so I think it's good to maybe start winding down. I don't know. I was going to ask Henry some questions because he actually owns a microbrand, and I've always had these pressing questions. I don't know if you have a few more minutes, Henry. If we could just press you on a couple of things, not like crazy, put you on the spot, kind of ruin your reputation, kind of thing. Not so much, but I always wondered, as a micro brand, when say there's like a warranty claim, how would you go about dealing with something like that? Like say someone's watch just stops working within the warranty period. Do you have like a set watchmaker that you would send it off to, maybe the place where your watches are made in Switzerland, or is there some other option that you have?
Yep. So I think it varies based off of the company. For us, we have our manufacturing partner in Switzerland. So we offer a 2-year warranty, which is backed by my manufacturer. So anything that goes wrong goes right back to Switzerland. And, if it's something that's terminally like ill with the movement, then that gets swapped out. But generally that's the case. We do have watchmakers that we work with locally as well for really, really minor stuff if needed. Like say, client has an issue and really needs a quick turnaround, then that's probably faster, which is an option. But I think the critical part for any brand is really you stand behind your product, and one way or another you find a solution that makes your clients happy.
Yeah, that's great. I always wondered that, how brands dealt with that, because turnaround is a big thing, right? If I didn't know if maybe you would, or one or a brand would offer just a replacement because getting it repaired might be too difficult or something. But it's good to hear that there are local options as well.
Yeah, and if the event that
Mhm.
the solution is simply a replacement, that's always an option that's available as well. You kind of assess on a
Yeah.
case by case basis.
Yeah. Yeah, and you had mentioned earlier how you came up with the 38 millimeter size. It was based on the Sarb watch. So I was thinking about that as well. How you did come up with a good size like that. At least in my opinion, it's a good size. But did you guys? I don't know if Keith, you had any questions, or Toran or Bobby, about specifically being a microbrand owner?
Have you ever participated in like wind up, like those wind up watch fairs in like New York or San Francisco?
That's a good question. No, not yet, because we're much too young. So the company, we actually only had our watches available, started delivering them this past April, I think. So it's fairly fresh. The
Okay.
project itself is about 3 years in the making. So we've been kind of working through production. Well, firstly, design and marketing, production. And one of the challenges we faced was we didn't Kickstarter, we didn't crowdfund, we did all the funding ourselves. We had a pre-sale, and we had early adopters who were really, really supportive, which was helpful at the very beginning. But just taking on the financial burden oneself kind of stretches the timelines a little bit. So there has been a keen interest to one day participate. Hopefully, when the world opens back up and these events are back online, and we're in a position to participate. But looking forward to that day still.
Sure. And I think the pandemic probably put a little wrench into the timing, right?
Oh man, it literally put us back a year. So yeah. It's little things too, right? Because we manufacture in Switzerland, but there's components, right? You're looking at if you're sourcing packaging for us, our cases are made in China, or not cases, but the watch packaging is made in China, and some of our the straps we source overseas as well. So you're looking at global supply chain, and you don't think, oh, you have an issue in this part of the world that's sorted, but that other part of the world is still having issues. It delays the entire project. You can't launch with one piece missing. So it's learning in real time, I guess you could say.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah. The chat was asking what your brand was, but Henry's brand is York in Front Watches. He actually sent his watch in for me to review. I actually hadn't met Henry up until this point. So a friend, Bob, a time ago, actually lives close to Henry, and he asked me if I'd like to take a look at these, and yeah, that's how I got them. I don't think Henry barely knew if I was going to get them or not, but we connected on Instagram after that, and yeah, so I invited Henry on because we have this chat every week. And it's funny you say that, Will Money, because it is a street.
It is good eye.
Yeah, it's downtown Toronto, which makes it kind of special for me. Is I was spent many days in downtown Toronto before I moved to the dirty schwa.
But it's kind of it's interesting that sometimes people will just look at it, it's like, oh, it's a name, but all of a sudden you know who's from Toronto or who has a sense of awareness of Toronto, because right away they're like, oh, York in Front, that's so Toronto.
Yeah. Do you guys have any other questions before we maybe call it a night?
I just had a quick question, Henry. I thought it was interesting that you chose not to go with a dive watch as your first release, because that seems to be the most popular, I think, sports model watch out there. So I just wonder kind of what your planning process was for kind of releasing more of a mid-size, I guess, field or almost like a dress watch.
So what's interesting about that is that's precisely why we didn't go with the dive watch, because every micro brand was putting out a dive watch, and it's kind of almost like you want to go against the grain a little bit, be a rebel, but no, it's more like, well, my perspective was customers have tons of options if they want, like, something from the established brands in the dive category. If they wanted a micro brand diver, tons of great options. So instead of trying to create something to not necessarily compete, but to as an alternative would be more challenging. But at the same time, I've always had a affinity towards just really, really clean, kind of purposeful watches that are multi kind of use. So, the philosophy behind York in Front is something you could dress up, dress down, go to work in an office environment, take it out, camping that weekend. And the field watch was always something that you could do that, but field watches weren't quite dressy enough. So if you took elements of a dress watch, which in many aspects is very similar to a field watch, just a little dressier or a little bit more classy in its appearance, and you were able to straddle that fine line and create a dressier field watch inspired timepiece, then that'd be a really cool starting point that was different than the majority of the micro brands and what they were pursuing. And the interesting part is that was 3 years ago that we kind of had that concept laid out. And we, again, picked 38 kind of as that sweet spot in our mind where watches maybe would be, or the enthusiasts would gravitate towards. Fast forward 3 years later, we're starting to see a pivot. And now there are a lot more watches coming out closer to 38 mil. And there are a lot more micros now starting to look at either field watches or railroad watches. Even pilots like Fliegers and those kind of watches are starting to get a little more attention, and you're seeing the pivot away from the dive watch. So maybe it's after the transition happens, then we'll release a dive watch down the road.
Right, so you're hipsters, yeah.
I think he prefers he's a contrarian.
Right.
No, that's great. That's a great question, Toran.
Abs. Thank you.
Thanks for your response.
Oh, not at all. Thanks for the awesome questions.
All right, guys. Well, I think we should call it a night. I can hear my kids killing themselves out there. So um, I am very grateful that you all joined in. Thank you, Keith, Toran, Henry, and Bobby. I really appreciate you guys. Thanks so much for coming on. It was such a fun night. I always have a great time, and everyone in the chat as well, in the text chat. I mean, thanks for joining. I'm blown away by your support and the time you spend with us. You know, like that. Yeah, that you're willing to spend this time with us. You know, it's great. But yeah, so we will see you guys again next week. Let me know if you guys have anything you'd like to talk about. But until then, we'll chat next week. Thanks, guys.
Thanks very much.
See you next week.
Yeah.
Thanks for hosting.
Yeah, no problem.